Hi, this is Lawrence Gowan of Styx, and you are listening to and watching the Fab Four Free for All.
And welcome to a very special edition of the Fab Four Free for All, the Beatles podcast, where we talk Beatles and related. And yes, I am solo today. Mitch Axelrod, your host. Tony and Rob couldn't make it. And they are very upset they couldn't because, as I said, we have a very special episode. You might notice the gentleman on my, I guess, right or left, whichever way you're looking. I hate Zoom. But in any case, we are very, very honored and happy to have with us Lawrence Gowan. He is one of the lead singers of the band Styx, and has a big solo career in his own right. Some of my favorite songs are on the Strange Animals album, but we'll get into that as well because that's Beatle related too.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, Lawrence.
Well, wonderful to be here. Thank you very much, Mitch.
Well,
My pleasure. I just a Beatle-centric show, I think, is a great idea. I notice. Now, are those some of the remastered ones? I know they recently remastered those again, I do believe.
Yeah, they remixed as well.
Remixed, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, one of the songs we'll be talking about, I Am the Walrus, I don't know if you've heard the new remixes. They remixed the ending and it's totally different. So you should go listen to it on Spotify or YouTube. Yeah. Giles Martin, George's son, took some liberties. Some people love it, some people hate it, but you should listen to it, and I'd love to get your feelings on it. But anyway, yeah, these are just back. I just have them in the back. I made them up myself because we were doing shows on the Red and Blue albums a couple of months ago, and it's the only place my wife lets me hang up stuff because it's a lot of times it's she always says it's me or the Beatles, and quite frankly, she doesn't like it when I hesitate because I think a little bit, and I mean sometimes the Beatles are pretty cool. Anyway, so. I got to admit, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I wasn't a big Styx fan. I did love the hits. And then I saw you guys about 5 years ago, with another band. I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Foreigner. I don't even remember. You were in Jones Beach and you guys blew me away. I mean, you know how there's sycophants? I became a Styxophant. It was... No, it depends on how far you go there. But quite frankly, you guys just were unbelievable. I went back and started listening, and then the one show that got me was the Contemporary Youth Orchestra of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Oh, and we'll get into that because there's other Beatles stuff there. But wow, I mean, if anybody has a chance to go look at it on YouTube, buy the DVD, the CD, please do. That show just... cemented it for me. And now when you guys announced that you'd be in my backyard in Westbury, New York, I actually think I got a little moist. I think so, but hopefully I'll see you that night in March. But so let me just take you back a little bit because it was a Beatles show. I got to take you back to when you were like 7. As of this taping, it's February 2nd. And it's a week away from the date that would be iconic in music history, February 9th, 1964. I know you were affected by it.
I was very affected by that day. In fact, that's as were millions of musicians around the world. So it's not a particularly original story, but I'll give you my camera angle on that
Sure.
On that night on Sunday, February the 9th of 1964.
Long time.
Yeah. So as you know, the Ed Sullivan Show was pretty much I'm sure it was the highest rated variety show. And it might have been the only variety show that was on network television, on CBS on Sunday nights. And we watched it. I remember starting to watch it probably when I was 4 or 5 years of age. But when I was 7, I'm going to go back a tiny little bit. My birthday is November 22nd. And I turned 7 on November 22nd, 1963, which was, of course, a rather infamous day because John F. Kennedy was assassinated on that day. So my birthday was a little bit mired by global events.
Yeah.
But just a couple of months later, I remember, this is my biggest part of the memory of it. I remember my mom saying to me, because I was born in Glasgow and we were growing up in Toronto, but my mom was, of course, Scottish. My dad was Irish. And my mom said, "Oh, Auntie May called. There's going to be a group from Liverpool on Ed Sullivan tonight. And Liverpool's very close to Glasgow. Apparently, they're very, very popular in England." And she said, "We really have to watch it." I told her we watch it anyway. So yeah. So I said, "Oh, okay, good." Feigning half interest. I know Ed Sullivan comes on at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, and we're going to see a group from Liverpool. And I remember perfectly. And we prior to coming on the air, you asked me if I was still a Maple Leaf fan, and yes, up until the hour of about 8 o'clock on that Sunday night, February 9th, I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a Maple Leaf one day. It's not a question of what my future is going to be. I wish I had my iPad here because there's an old photo of me in my Leaf outfit and white skates standing on the frozen driveway, and. But suddenly 8 o'clock comes and Ed Sullivan says, "Here they are from Liverpool, England, the Beatles." Okay, words to that effect. And immediately they go into All My Lovin', right? So close your eyes and okay. It wasn't 30 seconds into that song, because I didn't know what a rock band was or anything. I'm 7 years old. And about 30 seconds into that song, I remember my dad, who was a really good musician and eventually became a massive Beatles fan and would play Beatles songs on the piano. But my dad was taken aback because he couldn't figure out, and he went, "What the hell is this?" I remember the words
said that.
Words coming out of his mouth. And it was the first time I felt like, yeah, never mind what this is. This is not for you. This is what I want. Whatever's going on here is what I want in my life. And as I say, millions of musicians, future musicians,
oh sure,
felt the same lightning bolt happen. Okay, so that's where the story diverts into being very common. But at that moment, I remember it was probably the first time that I ever had an opposing view to my dad, who knew everything about the universe. And by the end of the show, I think he was a fan, by the way. But but at first, it was just not what was expected. We'd been seeing Frank Sinatra, or Tony Bennett, or or even Elvis, on that show before, I suppose. So that's the big moment there. Now, I'll tie this into where I think we're going to go next, or perhaps.
Okay.
Beatles came to America on February the 7th, 1964. On February the 7th, 1984, 20 years later, I walked into Ringo's home, Tittenhurst Park, which was John Lennon's home, where he made Imagine prior to Ringo living there. This is 1984, obviously. And Ringo met me at the door and shook my hand and basically said, "Well, good luck with the record and welcome to Tittenhurst Park." So I don't know what the universe holds for people and why it dishes these things out in a certain order, but that is still a great moment in my life. Yeah.
And believe me, we dug up some pictures of you geeking out at Tittenhurst.
You did?
Oh yeah, I already posted them on our Facebook page. People are loving them, and they'll be in this in the YouTube version of this. But yeah, the pictures of you by the door and the pictures of you in the field doing almost the exact place where the Beatles were on the Hey Jude, turned out to be the Hey Jude album.
Right at the door. That go ahead, finish.
No, I was going to say you had talked about that door and what was behind it. I feel like I'm on Let's Make a Deal at the moment, but what's behind door number one?
Well, behind the door that you're referring to, if you have a photo handy, you should probably put it up. This is
Oh
the
yeah,
door on the Hey Jude album, the four of them. The last photo session that the Beatles ever had
you
ensemble
are a
together.
geek.
And so I, of course, look at me.
Look at me. Don't worry.
Uh, in a second, I'm going to reveal where I am right now, and then you're gonna see just how it ties into to us chatting
I
here.
think I know where that's going.
Yeah, okay. So behind that door is we were calling it the temple. We don't know what it really was, I guess, because it was probably built in the 1800s. So,
Right.
and it's a separate building, about maybe 100 yards from the main studio, something like that, down a very whimsical path called the Wibbly Wobbly Way. I mean, how British is that? Where the
Exactly.
winding path of brick, you know, walls, as you're walking along. So a very Alice in Wonderland,
Sure.
The Wibbly Wobbly Way. And it led to that spot. And we were allowed to use the room because it was great just for drums, because it had a fantastic built-in reverb to it, right? Just sounded great, sounded kind of like the drum sound of the 80s, which was Jerry Marotta's sound. He was the drummer on Strange
Yep.
Animal. And Jerry Marotta, Phil Collins, that gated kind of room sound that was so popular in the 1980s, still one of the greatest drum
Yeah,
sounds
that
ever.
you
Oh,
pageant production.
that's right. That's right. So that we could. David Tickle was the producer of Strange Animal, and he knew exactly what the 1980s should sound like. He had that locked in. And so we were setting up Jerry's drums in there, and you couldn't help but notice. But there were a couple of large racks and racks of clothing, which I recognized to be Ringo's Beatle outfits. And I mean, I saw gray, the gray suits with the collarless
All of the
suits.
suits.
I
Yeah.
saw, I saw if I recollect correctly, there were two or three renditions of the Sergeant Pepper outfit.
Ugh.
Um, uh, and these things were not like carefully preserved the way that they've become such museum pieces now. In fact, back then he was Ringo. The little bit that I got to know of him, he was very much a man in his 40s, so a very young man, who was fighting against being relegated as a museum piece. He wanted to still be a musician and do creative things, which he had done already. But it was just before he started the All Star Band and really found his wheels again
Oh
as a
yeah.
musician. And so it was during that period. And anyway, I saw all these Beatle outfits that he'd worn crammed onto these the long pole hangers that
Yeah.
you see
Sure.
dry cleaners or something like that.
Yep.
Just crammed on there, uh, you know, being kept, but not being kept as if they were like relics in any sense of the word. And I remember after we got the drums all together, because you're focusing on the album, you're not thinking about
Of
that
course.
really. He came in one day. He came into the studio every 2 or 3 days, just quick hello and an encouraging word, and fantastic. And he had an assistant named Mike O'Donnell, and he said, how's it? Ringo asked, how's the? They all called him Richie at home, but
Yeah.
I called I called him Mr. Star, and and he where was I? Yeah, I asked him. He said, sounding okay out there in the temple. I think he referred to it as the temple. I said, it's great. I said, I saw a bunch of your old stuff. I said, do you still have that drum head?
Oh.
That drum head, right? And he turned to Mike. He said, do you know where it is? I'm serious. He didn't really even have he couldn't pinpoint
Unbelievable.
it. I'm picturing that he's got his, like, this
Yeah.
is how bizarre your mind works. I'm picturing that he's got a setup of the Beatle drum kit, with some lighting on it,
Of
like
course.
some holy thing. No, it finally came to my mind. He's a musician, and it's just like John Lennon said. They're just musicians in a band, except it's a band that happened to be extremely successful.
The biggest band in the world. Yeah.
Perhaps the most successful outfit in the history of show business. So let's put them in that category. So, but as a musician, Ringo was a musician,
Right.
and I began to see that, yeah, when he's at home, he's a musician like we're all musicians here, and he just is who he is, but he treats his gear well, but not like they're sacred cows.
Well,
So my
yeah,
point is, I'm gonna get to the point.
that's
I
all
said
right.
he asks Mike where the drum head is. Mike goes, it's in the front closet. And he said, yeah, you can go get it. And Mike, he said, all right, come here. So I was allowed to walk in, and we're looking in the front closet behind the shoes and everything. He pulls out the
Drumhead.
Beatles drum head. Not only just that, I've got a great photo of myself holding it.
I do too.
I'm a good man.
We found
Uh,
it.
but this was the original because as I was able to look at it up close, and I wish I had back then, I wish we had iPhones or something that could capture this.
Of course.
The original logo that they were going to go with, it, now you see, I don't fully recall if it was the one with the little bug ears that came out of the
Yeah.
V, but it was not the Beatles logo, which was basically in black paint, I suppose,
Yeah.
the one we all know.
The
But
drop key.
around that was another logo that the guy had penciled in and had obviously erased and gone, no, that's not quite it.
Oh
And then
my.
I decided on. So I don't know for sure. I'm going to guess that that's the one that we saw on Ed Sullivan that night, but I don't know for sure because being the original, they might have had another one made for their trip to America. I don't know.
There were a
But
few of the different, for obviously different tours in 65, 6. So there were a bunch of them that were made, but still, I mean, any of them is so iconic. And we do have a picture of you holding the drum head up with the drop T and a Rickenbacker as well.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's
good. That,
yeah, we'll definitely put that stuff. But you know what? It's funny you say that about the drums because I'm a drummer, and my drums don't mean anything, but Ringo's drums are iconic. And then in 1970, Paul used them on his McCartney album, and you see them in his backyard with the snow. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the oyster pearl drum set is in the snow, and they didn't, again, they weren't they were the Beatles, but it's their gear, and they're just still using it, or they were still using it at that point. So kind of wild that they just, there's still part of me that would probably want to go on that clothing rack and, put something on under my clothes and just say, oh, I'll be right back. And
well, this is the thing, I'm not going to say that I wasn't tempted, you know.
of course,
There's a song on my album called on that album called "The Criminal Mind," and that's
okay.
probably somewhere. But honestly, I felt like it's such a privilege that he's allowing us to use his house, his home
Yeah.
studio to record. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take anything. I've robbed several banks in my lifetime. No, you can erase that part.
No, that's right. Me too. Don't worry.
No, I felt like no, it's too much of an intrusion to take that. But I did have friends at home who would continually be writing to me going, can you get me this? Can you get me that?
Of course.
Eventually, the only thing that Mike handed me when I was leaving was because Ringo was still playing the drums. He had a kit in the studio. And actually, Zach as well, I'd hear him practicing every morning. He was only 18 years old, and he was already fantastic.
Amazing.
Just fantastic. And you just knew it's in him. And I did get a busted drumstick.
Oh, cool. You still
An
have it?
old busted drumstick. Oh yeah, of course I have that.
Yeah.
And so it was just something that was going. In fact, it might have been even in the garbage. So one busted drumstick is all I came away with.
That's all right. You know what? It's a great story, and quite frankly, it's
The memory, the whole thing in here, and the fact that he made such great encouraging comments about the album. I mean, towards the end when we were mixing the record, he'd come in occasionally and say, your record's sounding really good, that kind of thing. But he came in right towards the end and he said to me, I've been telling you your record's sounding good. It's more than good. It's very, very good. He goes, and we dance around to it in the kitchen. I said, what song? He goes, the first one, the one about the high fashion model magazine. And just the fact that that came out of his mouth, I was like, well, that's the opening track on the record. Because if he ever gets this record and puts it on, I want him to, for one song or for 10 seconds, I want him to hear that. So that's I've got my piano here at all times, right? So that's how the record opens.
That's Cosmetics, right?
Cosmetics. That's right. People think it's called High Fashion.
Song, yeah. Listen, I want to mention that album a minute because, first of all, you mentioned The Criminal Mind. Oh my God, that song, I had never heard it again before 5 years ago. So excuse me. But the album went double platinum, but a Criminal Mind was on there. Cosmetics, which is a great song, is on there. And most people don't know that the video for A Criminal Mind was actually really a pioneer with that cartoony stuff even before Take On Me.
Correct. That is correct. It came out months, at least half a year before Take On Me. Aha had done a video for that song in '84. I think it came out in September of '84. And then, according to, so I don't have this firsthand knowledge, but one of the producers at Much Music, which was a Canadian MTV, said that the director who wound up directing the famous Take Me On video, because it was a video for Take Me On they did in September of '84, and it didn't blow up the charts the way it eventually would. But that director apparently saw the video for A Criminal Mind in January of '85 and went back and used that rotoscope technique to do a second video for Take Me On and Take Me On to On the World. I mean,
that was a big video.
But yeah, the lineage of it is that A Criminal Mind was a Klaatu had used rotoscope. I was corrected once recently that they had used rotoscope actually in the late '70s. But the idea of 35 millimeter film, then transitioning the character into a cartoon character, that's which is in the Take Me On video. That was originally in the A Criminal Mind video, and that video won the Juno Award, which is kind of the Canadian equivalent of the Grammy Award. It won video for best video of the year. It had to beat out Strange Animal, which is also on that record. But so Bryan Adams and Corey Hart and Loverboy and some great acts. But A Criminal Mind was the top one.
I just, again, even with the CYO that you did with the orchestration, The Criminal Mind. Wow. Yeah,
thank you. That song stood me really, really well.
It's a fantastic song. And Tony Levin was on that album, right?
Of course.
And Tony was with John a few times. Did he ever talk about anything he did with John?
We did a little bit. We were so focused on what we were doing. I was and am and will forever be such a fan of Tony Levin. So Tony Levin, Jerry Marotta, David Rhodes, those three pivotal musicians from Peter Gabriel's band, they were on Strange Animals. So no wonder it sounds so good. But Tony, yes, I would ask him about the double fantasy sessions, etc., and just how astounded I was that of all bass players ever that John Lennon would go with Tony is probably the highest praise you can imagine. Having anybody sit in that chair after Paul McCartney. So Tony, he told me some great things about just how John would be in the sessions, how you could be. Let me see. I want to get this right. He'd say things like, you might be sitting around kind of not really accomplishing much for quite a while. Then suddenly the muse or whatever the mood would hit John, and he'd go, all right, let's go, let's take this one, boom, and he's ready to record. And Tony said to me one time, I think Earl Slick went, hang on, I got a tune, and John would go, no, tune later. I got to go to the washroom. Go to the washroom later, right? And they'd immediately do it. It's live off the floor. So I remember Tony said you were almost a little bit panicked to leave the studio floor, because that might be after a couple of hours might be the moment, and you missed it. So that's one memory I have of him telling me about the making of that record. And but then I also had, at that point, I wanted to know about recording Family Snapshot and songs like that with Peter Gabriel, and
of course,
and most of all, just kind of hanging with the guy and getting to know what he was like. I'll give you another weird story in my life about Tony Levin. In 1982, my first album had come out, and it was not a commercial success. But I went and saw Peter Gabriel, Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, and it was the tour where they would come down through the through the audience holding these beams of light, flashlights, but I mean they were kind of searchlights. There, and they'd kind of shine, and they'd converge onto the stage, and the crowd would lift them up. And it was such a ceremonial, unique opening to a rock show. And Tony happened to come right by. So this is the first time I met him without him knowing. He came right by my seat. I was on the aisle right up towards the front. And he came up, put the light toward me. And I actually, people are like, I put my arm around him and I went, Tony, we're going to make a record together one day. And he shines the light in my face. I told him that right off the bat. I said, I told you we were going to make a record one day. You probably don't remember. He went, when was that? And I said, yeah, when you were walking to the stage. And here we are 2 years later. I'm in the studio with them in Ringo's house making this album. So
Tony's amazing.
If that's not a charmed existence, I don't know.
Believe me, I
love reminiscing about this stuff because it makes me go, God, I've been awfully lucky.
Yeah, Tony was part of the Sir Lou Grade, John's last TV appearance. He was in the band. What do you call it? Yeah, he did. I was playing bass when John did the obligatory Sir Lou Grade TV because he had a favor to give him, but whatever. But it was Tony was part of the band of the BOMF. I'm not going to say what the band of Mother, was nice on this show, but and they wore the two faces, the masks when they did like Slipping and Sliding and Imagine stuff. It was so Tony was with John.
Well, I know that the band of Mother's fantastic. That's what
exactly.
So I did not know that though. I did not know that. So I got to look for that. So there is that.
Yeah, cool.
Tony with John. Well, I got to go look for that.
So have you seen Get Back? Have you seen Get Back?
Of course. That came out. I watched it probably 3 full times over the course of a week. I watched it every night in it. Pretty much not in its entirety every night, but over the course of about the first 2 weeks it was out, I watched it in its entirety every single night. And because I'd actually played on stage with Billy Preston. Billy Preston joined us on stage here for a couple of times. And we did Get Back and we did Will It Go Around? Will It Go Around in Circles? Sure. And Let It Be. And so we had 2 keyboards, but Billy Preston was such an influence on me, such a fan. But seeing him in Get Back and what a pivotal role he played on that record, and I'd heard it said before, George Harrison had said, everyone was suddenly on their best behavior, but he just brought a vibe into that room that suddenly all their musical things suddenly were center stage all of a sudden, and they were just making a record like 4 musicians with a guest in there and So I would, on my second or third time through, this is kind of embarrassing, but I'd have it on the screen and I'd have my keyboard on my piano and I'd sit there and play along with Billy and along with them as they're formulating the songs, especially the part where Paul is, writing Get Back, just
amazing.
Coming away on the bass, kind of come up with what it is. Meanwhile, George is over there going, I'm not doing what, just writing an absolute masterpiece that hardly anyone's paying any attention to. I found that
unbelievable.
That is truly Peter Jackson. My God, what he captured there, he captured maybe for the only time ever what it actually is like to be in a band that's struggling away, trying to figure out what are we going to do next that's any good, right? And it just happens to be the Beatles, and they came to the right conclusion. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to ruin the end of the movie, but it comes out.
Yeah, I think people know the end. Something about a rooftop, and then
Yeah, there's all that. And my God, there's another thing that's really revealed so well in Get Back that wasn't really emotionally brought home in the original Let It Be, is that I didn't know that up until half an hour before they walked onto that roof, they were still debating whether they're going to do it.
yeah,
Okay. And then they go out onto the rooftop and they give the performance.
yeah, I
I
know.
mean, the performance. It's live. It's freezing. It's January. Do you know what it's like to play in cold weather?
Oh yeah,
Damp weather? It's not fun.
no,
They absolutely not just rise to the occasion, but if there's such a thing as magic, between human beings, you can see the connection and bond that they have through their music is it's miraculous, quite honestly. It really is. And it all gels and comes together so to speak, so
yeah,
perfectly, that you're just left in awe. So
oh yeah.
that's my review of the film.
Well, I want to bring it
I
back
give
to
it a
you.
thumbs
Actually,
up.
I give it many thumbs up. Believe me. But I wanted to bring it back to you actually because there was a part in Get Back which you've seen where George is right about lunchtime and he says, "See you around the clubs. I'm leaving."
Yeah,
And John, whether it's kidding or not, says, "Well, we'll get Clapton." And whether, again, whether it was joking or not, who knows? Clapton obviously laughed when he heard all that. But getting it back to you, you replaced a popular person in an iconic band.
right.
And how did you adapt in your first few, either live and then especially when you made new music in the studio? But was there any trepidation on your part? And were the fans sitting there saying, "Oh, let's see what he's got"? How did you really adapt to being in Styx?
Okay, so yeah, so first of all, they never gave me the impression, and I've never once felt that I replaced anyone.
Yeah,
I know
maybe
I
a bad choice of words, but
no, 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 oh, no, I realize, but it's an obvious. I say it about other bands
yeah,
myself. I say the
okay,
same. I use the same terminology, but speaking from my own camera angle yet again, it was never put to me that way at all. It was like, would you like to join the band? I'm like, I think I would. Could you? We need you to sing Grand Illusion and Come Sail Away, and I realized, oh, those are the songs that Dennis DeYoung sings, and he was either wrote or was part of the writing of. And can I sing those songs? I'm like, give me an hour. I remember I got on my bike, went to even in '99. It was like January. So I can't remember February. I think my '99. Even then, actually, might have been a bit later, maybe March. I went and got one of their albums at Grand Illusion. Came in and realized, oh yeah, I can hit those notes. Okay, so yes. Um, and we talked about an hour later, and I said, "Yeah, I can do it." Uh, and it began to dawn on me that, and this is, I don't want to sound without any false modesty or without
sure, go ahead.
without sounding like I'm being boastful. I did get the sense that, well, if they were going to choose someone, I think I could be the right person
Yeah,
because I'd had all the experience of playing all the big buildings that they had played, Maple Leaf Gardens and the Montreal Forum, and all the big buildings that they had played in Canada, I had played. So I was very, accustomed to playing in front of, 15, 16,000 people. And which I had done with them 2 years ago when they opened the new Montreal Forum. So I thought, so there's that. So I know how to perform in front of large audiences. Then secondly, I thought, when I met them in '97, I'd never seen Styx live,
wow,
and I was really knocked out with their show. Same
yeah,
as you were when you saw
oh yeah,
us. I just thought this band surpasses what I had imagined them to be, which was what I always liked about them was they were the first progressive rock band. Very into progressive rock, as you can imagine.
yep,
Progressive rock band that was not from the UK that actually were truly successful. And I think that a lot of that came from the pop sensibility that was in there. And when I began to really listen to their records after, uh, after I'd seen them live, I went and started to listen to their albums just as a newborn fan who happens to judge a lot of bands by what their live performance gives. And I suddenly began listening to their music in a different way. And I began to notice things about it that I really felt musically simpatico with, let's call it that. And I've even done a few breakdowns where I'll tie this to the Beatles for a second.
That's all right.
They're quite Beatlesque, quite honestly. I mean, there's a chord progression. I don't know if you can hear this. Okay, can you hear this piano?
A little bit, yeah.
You only need to hear it a little bit. Let's take, for example, I read the news today, oh boy. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that song. Well, that kind of chord progression, which has been used by Oasis, by the Beatles, by Queen,
Yeah.
This morning I get up, I die a little. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. That's very much in. If you think your life is,
Yeah.
complete confusion, because you never win the game. Just remember that,
Yeah.
So I began to notice tie-ins between Beatles songs and Styx songs. And whenever I hear a Beatlesque influence in there, I hear it in Yes, I hear it in Genesis, I hear it in Elton John, I hear it in Queen. When I began to really clock that in the Styx music, I felt a real connection there. Now, the second part of your question is how did I go from being a solo artist where basically I have to answer every bell that rings to being part of a band? Well, that was more of a mountain that I had to climb. Not so much of a mountain, but basically that was more of the challenge, was that you're in a group setting now, and it doesn't come down to one final arbiter as to what we're doing. It's a mind, it's a collective mind. And quite honestly, when I watched Get Back, I could see that these guys had long before mastered that, how to somehow let their brains unite and kind of intertwine in what it was that they were creating. And they each had these tremendous skills and talents and songwriting abilities and musical instincts. But individually, as strong as they were, there was something that happened as they collected. So that was what I had to kind of begin to understand in being part of Styx. And I think it took a long time for me, quite honestly, to really understand that. We did a record I'm still very proud of called Cyclorama, which was in the 5 years, about 4 years after I'd been in the band. Remember, I came in right when the music industry was really in upheaval because of the internet, and the major labels were kind of scrambling as to what their future significance is going to be. And eventually, though, when that began to settle somewhat, and quite a long time later, we started to make really good band records. The Mission, I'm very proud of, from 2017, and definitely Crash of the Crown from 2021, which is, it seems very recent to me, but anyway, those records are where I think I finally got over the hurdle of how to get my brain to meld with Tommy Shaw and meld with James Young and with Willie Vankovich, especially, who became our producer and then bandmate, co-writer, and with Todd and Ricky and Chuck. And so that's what I took from that. That was the harder transition. The moment we hit the stage together, as far as live goes, we have so much fun on stage, basically entertaining ourselves.
You can tell, though.
Yeah, and that's genuine. We really do enjoy each other's company, particularly on stage. We enjoy each other's company anyway, for the most part. Sometimes we get on each other's nerves, but in real life, but that never happens on stage. We just know, first of all, there's this joyous atmosphere in the audience, so that's infectious to begin with. But then there's this thing on stage that's just it's a trip. And it's funny because I defy anyone to come to a Styx show and walk away and say, I didn't like that. That's not going to happen.
I wanted to not like it. I mean, I did. And again, the harmonies also remind me of a lot of Beatles. I mean, the Styx had incredible harmonies, but I left feeling like I didn't miss anything. I mean, I know you guys don't do certain songs. I didn't miss anything.
Right.
You guys, whether it was Tommy sounding freaking amazing,
Yeah.
or you sounding freaking amazing, and again, the whole atmosphere of the band. Even when Chuck comes on for his one or two or three songs, you feel good.
Yeah.
And Ricky's amazing. Don't get me wrong.
Good vibe.
Like Todd's a monster behind the drums. I mean, gee.
He,
Um,
he he's a mega musician, Todd.
oh yeah, I've
He,
seen his master classes, and again, being a drummer, I just want to quit every time he tunes up.
and yet he won't let you.
I know
He won't
he's
allow that.
and he's
Yeah.
such a Ringo fan too, and
Oh
they're
yeah.
so
Oh,
different,
yeah.
but they both, it's weird because Ringo, even in Get Back, was the strength behind the group. You could see it. He played rock solid, never had it, he waited a lot, but for them to come up with stuff. And when you see you guys live, Todd is just, he's really like, I'm not going to say the glue because you guys are all such incredible pieces together, but wow. I mean, it's,
Oh no,
no way
I
you
think
can say you don't like it.
I think it is fair to say he is the glue. He is the glue in the show. The uh, we're all pretty strong on our instruments, but he holds it where it should be held.
Yeah.
And as Ringo did, as you saw in Get Back. I mean,
Yeah.
God, how many hours a day? I mean,
Ugh.
there were no drum machines that he could go, hang on a sec, I gotta go watch it. Here, play to this beat. That just didn't happen. It
Right.
had to be his personality and his innate sense of how to follow a melody. That's one of the highest challenges of a drummer is how do I support the melody that's going on here?
Yeah. Play to the song.
Not get in the way of it, but when a moment happens, what's the right way to transition? Because Beatles songs are so full of transitions
Yeah.
that if they're not glued together properly, they would fall apart, right? So there's so many ways you can dissect Ringo's drumming as to what works so well. But Todd is one of these super musicians that has the technical skills that are just the technical skills of a Vinnie Colaiuta and a Neil Peart and a Phil
Oh, yeah.
Collins. That's all in Todd, right? But the song sensibility of Ringo is also there because he appreciates that. And he's also a big fan of Jerry Marotta, who I
Yeah.
happen to be a gigantic fan of. So, um,
And getting back with Jerry, I think his brother Rick also played with Paul and later on.
Jerry played with Paul.
Jerry played with Paul as well.
Jerry is on the Press to Play album.
Okay.
Yes, they did that, I think, in 88 or 89.
86, I think.
Okay, 86. So, yeah, that was
That was actually produced by Padgham, and Phil Collins was actually on a track on that as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was right when Jerry was. It was in the transition from Peter Gabriel. The next thing he did was Paul McCartney. Then he did the Indigo Girls, and I love those records as well.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Amazing stuff. Just a couple more things, if you don't mind, if you have a couple minutes for us.
go ahead.
I want to talk about the I Am the Walrus because I know you did a cover of Eleanor Rigby during the pandemic, but the I Am the Walrus, the Beatles had so many songs with orchestration. Was it a band thing that you chose I Am the Walrus to do?
I started playing I Am the Walrus back in the 1970s in a band that I had back then, which was a band that was, quite honestly, a band that was trying to be, we had a ton of Beatle influence in us, like a lot, but we were trying to be like Genesis or Yes or a progressive rock band, right in the heart of the punk and the disco era. So we never got signed to a record deal. But we used to play I'm the Walrus. It was to my mind, it's one of the first prog rock songs. I think a lot of great progressive rock bands based a lot of their careers upon A Day in the Life would be one because of the transitions that go in there. Strawberry Fields Forever, but definitely I Am the Walrus. Such an inventive piece of music that it is that we always used to play it. We played it because we had a mellotron as well, so we could do this. We could get the string sounds in there, the cellos, etc. And we did a really good rendition of it. And so I'd always played it. and when I was touring in England, I was opening for a band called the Stranglers in England in 1997. 1990, let me think about that. Yeah, late 90, no, 98. I'm sorry. Yeah, in 98, right before I joined Styx. We did a full tour of the UK. And I would play I'm the Walrus in those shows as well, just to kind of connect my Beatle thing. So when I joined Styx, I would play it. I'd play it sometimes in sound checks, just be playing it. And JY, he'd always notice it. And we were playing at the Crossroads Festival in Dallas. And he said, let's do a non-blues thing. Let's do something because everybody's doing blues. Let's do something non-blues. He goes, let's work on I Am the Walrus. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. And at that show, how's this for a coincidence? So we played I Am the Walrus. Went out live on the radio. And when we finished the song, I turned and Billy Preston was sitting side stage. That's when I first met him.
Wow.
Big embrace. I said, you have no idea how happy this makes me. And he loved the rendition. And then suddenly our manager got calls saying, we're getting requests for that live version that Styx just did of I Am the Walrus, which was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah.
So we released it. It got into the top 5 on the classic rock chart, and it did well. And then what you've seen is the one that we did with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra, where we did the full deal, and I just love it. I love the whole everything about the song. By the way, I'm going to show you right now. See, we're in Las Vegas at our residency, and what I love here is as you can see across the street.
There you go.
We're in the Venetian there. I hope you can see that.
We can. I can see the love on the Mirage.
Yep. You can see the love. Can you see the love tonight? I think, and Todd and I just went and saw it. I think that's about the 8th or 9th time I've seen it. And sadly, the Mirage is going to be no more.
I think, right?
So we're gonna lose that. But yeah, that's been a
amazing show.
Guys, that
that show with the speakers in the seats.
Yeah.
When they did come together, my wife and I were sitting there, and Paul's in the back of you, and John's in the front of you, and I kept looking back like he was singing at me, and I was like, what is that? And then I realized that there's like 100 speakers in the seats, whatever.
We don't actually call the show Love.
No,
we call it Beatle Heaven. Because that's what you're describing. It's like, oh, this is, I don't know of any experience on earth that definitely a musical sense that has ever lifted me into the clouds like this is, and the I'll say acrobatics, but it's more like it's artistic interpretation of, it's ballet and it's acrobatics, I suppose you have to say it, and all of that combining, but the spirit of the music is really elevated in that show and captured so well. And so I'd highly recommend it, unless you're coming to see Styx tonight.
Well, I'm sure there's the Styx show, and then I think there might be a show of Love before, so they could do both. Yeah. Why not? A couple last things. Your favorite album of the Beatles?
Absolutely impossible to say.
Come on, I know. Tomorrow it'll be something
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
All right. Now, I did read where your first album ever owned was Revolver.
That's correct. I won it.
You won it at Simpsons, right? I want to. Can you tell me a little, just a second?
Man, Mitch, nobody's ever mentioned that ever in an interview. But yes,
my research.
My good man. So my piano teacher called me at about 4:00. I'd just gotten home from school, and she said they're having a music contest over at Simpsons. Simpsons was a department store like Macy's. Okay. Yeah. And so she said, if you go over now, they might let you enter, even though it's already started. And I was like on my bike, and I ride over there, and I played, I think I played an original song. I guess I was, so let's think about Revolver. Revolver's 66. So I'm just
10 or 11?
10 years old, 10, maybe 11 years old. I played an original piece, and I think I played a Beethoven piece. A little piano rendition of the Fifth Symphony. And so then the audience, they vote. I got there like 10-5, so I was one of the last 2 or 3 people. And they vote on who won, and I won it. And they said, so your prize is any album in the store that you want. Well, I was ecstatic, right? Any album I want. The thing is, we didn't have a record player at home. We listened to the radio, and but I was like, oh God, the new album was Revolver. So I go up, I know exactly where it is in the store because I've only picked it up 7,000 times. I go up there, Revolver. So can I have this one? Yes, that's your prize. I take it home. I'm the eldest in my family. I got my sister, my two younger brothers. So when I took it home, we have no record player, but my mom kept saying, we're going to get one next year, being 67. So I took it home and I'm like, okay, you three, you never touch this. Never, ever near it. And, just, you can look at it, but that's it. But you can't touch it. It's in the cellophane. So what I did, brilliant 10-year-old that I was, not understanding the science behind vinyl, is in the basement, and people in New York would know this. So in your basement, you've got, there are windows, but they're up about 5 feet high, at least 5 feet high. And they're usually windows about this deep. Okay. So the record goes up in the window, right?
Oh.
People passing the house can see, yeah, I've got Revolver, but they can look at it, but they're all too tiny to touch it. Following year, the record player comes into the house. Finally, the big old, the big giant console that's got the
stereo consoles.
Can't wait. And by that time, Hello Goodbye was on the radio. So comes in the house. I go downstairs, get on the step, go up, grab the album, go upstairs, pull the cellophane off, pull the record out. And it looks like, the way French fries used to look. It's just a wave.
Aww.
And I'm looking at it going, I hope it works. Put it on. I put it on. I mean, it literally looks like this.
Yeah.
You can understand, right? It's just,
I've had them.
It's like that. Okay. And of course the needle goes on, it goes bang, bang, bang all over the place. And the disappointment in me is just, I couldn't believe it. And I wish I still had it, actually,
And that would have been a cool item to have and tell your story.
I have the cover. I kept the cover.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool.
This is definitely junk. And so I was very happy when I finally bought another Revolver.
Nice. Have you heard Now and Then, the new song? And?
Remember when that came out in November? Yeah, I'd sit in my hotel room like this and just play along with it, and just notice a beautiful transition that's in that piece. Anyway, yes, I've heard Now and Then.
So I guess you like it.
Of course, yeah, of course. I think it's fantastic, and just to hear John Lennon's voice again. I had that demo years ago, but to hear again, and this is because of Get Back, the technology that Peter Jackson made use of is what allowed this to happen. So and I love the sentiment of the song. I think it's just,
of course,
it's fantastic. Yeah,
we were privileged enough to be at a special Beatle event because we get invited to these things. I love every opportunity, and we're so grateful for it. But they played it, for the first time ever for a bunch of press and journalists. And I got to tell you, the first time John's voice came over, I wept. I'm not kidding. I mean, I've been a Beatle. I just turned 62 a couple of days ago. I was 2 when they came here, but my mother sat me in front of the TV to watch Sullivan. And then the Beatle cartoons actually got me into the Beatles. But when you hear John's voice alone, because they played it isolated, just Peter Jackson's track, I think a lot of us wept in there, and it was so moving, and to know that the Beatles are coming out with a new song, that was just wild.
Yeah, pretty astounding, isn't it? I mean, and the way they opened the song with just his voice solo.
Yeah.
If that doesn't grab your heart,
yeah.
I don't think anything will. Hey, so you mentioned the Beatle cartoons.
Yeah, sure.
Do you remember how Ringo's laugh used to sound in those cartoons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. I actually wrote a book on the Beatle cartoons called Beatle-tunes.
Yeah.
I'll actually, you know what? I'll send it to Amanda if you want it. I'll send you a copy.
Love to see it.
Yeah, and again, that's how so many people in America and a bunch of countries got to know the Beatles, and
Yeah,
a lot of the quote album tracks, which were not hits but were used in the cartoons, also became popular because of that, because they had to use them because there was nothing else, So
yeah. And that's another amazing thing. Even though the Beatles themselves were not involved in the making of those cartoons, and were very peripherally involved
yeah,
in Yellow Submarine, the spirit of what they conveyed, you could grab onto that
yeah,
and make something that was extremely Beatlesque, so much so that you wouldn't even know the difference almost,
right,
which is quite remarkable. And that's the personality. I remember hearing that George Harrison said that he felt that whatever that spirit was that was in the Beatles, he felt that that got transferred to the troupe of Monty Python in the
yeah,
70s, which is why he was so supportive with handmade films and of the Pythons, was because they had that spirit that existed in when they were a group had transferred, had somehow moved into the Python world. I saw this week that they did the change the subject ever so slightly, but at London Bridge, I believe, or Tower Bridge, they've put this 15-meter or 50-foot long dead parrot.
Oh,
And
I love the Pythons.
that's the thing. That's the kind of thing I think George Harrison probably would have paid for.
Oh, he would have probably, yeah, he loved that. Well, they were the Beatles of comedy, and
Yeah,
it's amazing,
yeah,
and
that's right.
even the Ruddles. I mean, we're still a product of Eric Idle, and I love the Ruddles.
I can't get over that. I know you know what you are, but you know by now that you're not me. I mean,
Well,
how could you possibly parody "I Am the Walrus" any better than that? So, man.
Piggy in the Middle, yeah. I mean, and Neil Innes was just a sweetheart of a guy.
Well, Neil Innes was such a phenomenal musician,
Yeah,
and I read only recently how he wrote those songs for the Ruddles, and amazing that what he did, according to this interview, was he when he was given the assignment, he decided I didn't listen to any Beatle records. He
mm,
decided I'm not going to listen because if I do, I'll be so. The essence of what's in the songs, he was able to parody to that level.
that's amazing, though, isn't it? I mean, and the comedy itself, the humor in the Ruddles was just brilliant. So,
Yeah,
so you guys are on tour always. I mean, it seems like you guys never stop, and
yeah,
I'm sure your families probably tell you that.
yeah.
So I I have to ask this, and I'm probably not the first person to ever ask it, so I'm not going to take credit. But you know, the Stones have been on tour 10 times since you joined 25 years ago.
Okay.
Was there ever any talk of you guys opening for the Stones and having a Styx and Stones tour?
There's never been any talk, but man, I'd love if that ever arose. I've
Uh,
seen 10 times they've toured. I think I've seen them three of those times because I was in the '90s as well. Yeah, and here's the thing though. I've seen great acts open for the Rolling Stones. That's not an enviable position to
oh,
be
I
in.
know.
I mean, I do it, but I won't even name some of the worldwide huge acts that have opened for the Stones and been more or less. It's not a good audience to play for. They're waiting for the royalty to arrive. That's really it.
Yeah,
Uh,
but you guys, I mean, let's face it.
oh yeah. Oh no, we could do it and be
Yeah,
incredibly successful. No
yeah.
question. Yeah, no
Listen, I would
question.
do it just to buy the shirt.
The problem is I'd be up there going like, this is really going great. I can't wait to see the Rolling Stones.
So where can
And
we find out, about your website or the Styx website? If
yeah,
people want to go see you guys on tour, hear about
sure.
you or
So
whatever.
yeah. So for Styx, you just go to styxworld.com. Styxworld.com. It's like one word,
Yep.
styxworld.com. Then you can go to all of the social media, Facebooks and Instagrams and TikToks or whatever the hell. And those are vital, conduits. And for myself, I have my verified account because there are a lot of uh, imposters, but the verified account is just Gowan. If you're on Instagram, you'll see the blue check beside it,
Yep.
or on Facebook, there's a Lawrence Gowan site, and then there's a Gowan site, Gowan, and then you can find what I'm up to as well.
Sounds good. I'm going to ask you to just stick around after we end for an ID, but I got to tell you, we've never had someone on that was so versed on the Beatles like you are. I mean, like I said, when I said in the beginning that you are a geek, I meant that in the nicest way because I'm
that's
one of
fine.
the biggest geeks.
Because the geek shall inherit the earth.
Very good. On that note, I really want to thank you, Lawrence. This has been a blast. We appreciate the time. And I hope everybody goes out and sees you guys, because I mean they don't need the publicity from me because you guys sell out everywhere. But locally in our backyard, I can't wait to see you in March. Maybe I can even get to say hi. And again, styxworld.com and Gowan. And this has really been such a blast. We appreciate it very much.
Great to chat with you, Mitch. It's a subject that we can discuss anytime, even if we're not on a Zoom call, because there's just an endless, fascination with the Beatles and the influence that they've had on music and every single band that ever came afterwards. So wonderful to do this. And so let's move on to your IDs. Thanks, everybody.
All right, let me just end the show. So for Fab Four Free for All, this has been your host, Mitch Axelrod, and joining me has been Lawrence Gowan. We appreciate you so much, and we will see you all next time.
Fab Four Free for All was edited and produced by Tony Triguardo at Word of Mouth Studios in Westbury, New York.
The opening and closing theme is My Dolly by the band The Badge, featuring longtime listener Jeff Slate, available on its debut album Digital Retro and recent Best Of compilation, as well as from the Fab 4 Free For All website.
Thanks for listening to Fab 4 Free For All.